Hey all, and welcome back to another CEO of the Lobster. Janine isn't here this week, so it's going to be another Lobster After Dark.
Okay.
This week we're going to do a bit of a dive into the latest stablecoin on the block, PayPal stablecoin, PYUSD. I'll just quickly bring up their page here. They're a dollar-backed stablecoin focusing on the US dollar and specifically targeting 3 use cases. They want to be backed fully by reserves. I actually kind of want to talk about this in a little bit. It's easy in and out. You don't have to be an institutional player with USDC or USDT where it can be really hard to move money in or out unless you're a very large player. And then that you can also use this in the way you use dollars in the PayPal app to spend it at online stores. And I just wanted to focus on this one because we've seen so many stablecoin projects recently, but this one seems to be a little bit more unique. It's got one of the biggest companies in the world behind it. They're in the payment space. They know about money. That is their bread and butter. So it'll be really, really interesting to see what they do with this space. I quickly want to touch at the reserves because I know this is one of the main criticisms thrown at Tether and USDC. And I think it's in the interest of being fair, we need to acknowledge that PayPal, PYUSD I should say, works in the exact same way. It's dollar-backed deposits, so cash in a bank account. But then they're also investing the money that people put into their coins into US treasuries and cash equivalents. When people say cash equivalents, it's a bit of a black box. Normally this means money market funds, which are really high liquidity assets where a company might put it in there for 24 hours and pull it back just so it's not sitting in a bank account and earns a fraction more than it would otherwise. It's normally used by large players that have got institutional needs, and on the other side of the coin there's also other large players. We just need $500 million until this ship arrives at port in 36 hours. We'll pay a bit of interest. Really, really high frequency stuff, often in the supply chain finance. So it's important to note the funds under this are getting invested. Now for stage 2, it's the second part of what I kind of wanted to talk about here, is the launch. So we've heard a lot of marketing hype around this project. We've seen Facebook and the Twitter blowing up. We've seen it being talked around on friends.net. And I'm not necessarily sure that that's actually materializing into adoption. PayPal will have had a huge marketing budget behind this to throw out this stuff, and a few of the stats I'm going to talk about. And again, for a coin that launched less than a month ago, the fact that it's sitting at 300 is pretty good. But it's still not really kind of in the market penetration I think that the PayPal was looking for here. If we actually dive into these stats and look at them comparing them to other stablecoins here. So CoinMarketCap, really good tool where you can filter based upon project use case. Look at PayPal in relation to other stablecoins. It's actually top 20, but above it, there's a lot of other US dollar stablecoins that it's going to defeat, right? The big boys being Tether, USDC, Binance, DAI's still pretty big these days. Going all the way down to ones like Pax. Pax is an interesting one because they're the ones who are actually issuing PayPal's stablecoin. If we jump in here into the actual in-depth dive into it and look at the trading data, it actually tells a really, really interesting story. So the couple of things that I really want to point out first and foremost are the 24-hour volumes, specifically these 2 exchanges. I'm not saying that this is wash trading. I don't have enough information to say that. But it's really, really interesting that 97% of the volume occurred on 2 exchanges. One of them I'm not actually particularly familiar with, Hotcoin. Correct me if I'm wrong. Bitmark is quite a trusted exchange. It's a decent exchange. However, they have huge amounts of volume, and even at 10 bips, 10 basis points, you'll be talking about the fees generated there are greater. The fees generated to these exchanges are greater than the actual depth and liquidity of the coins being traded in these exchanges. It's really, really interesting. I would actually disregard that. I actually think that's just something I wanted to point out first and foremost. The second one that's really interesting is this 2% depth figure up here, right? That stands out quite obviously because we're looking at thousands, if not tens of thousands, and then suddenly we're in the figure of 1.4, 1.6 million. So when they say plus or minus 2% depth, they are talking about an order book liquidity and the price being plus 2% or minus 2% in that price. So if the price was to rise to $1 and just do it live on screen then, $1.02, how much money is there out there willing to buy and sell? And likewise, if it fell by 2%, how much money is there out there willing to buy and sell at those two prices? So if we actually jump into that link, we can look at an hourly graph. There's not actually a huge amount of volume, but if we actually look at the order book itself, there is a really interesting grouping of very round numbers around these 2 points. And again, I don't know this for certain, but I'm actually going to speculate and put an idea out there that PayPal, as part of their strategy with launching this coin, has decided to defend the price around these points. Nothing would be worse than this billion-dollar organization to come in here and then suddenly their stablecoin is $1.3 or $0.7. So I think what they've done, and this isn't commitment, this is just them putting orders out there that they want to fill. They can withdraw it at a later date, but saying that, hey, we're willing to spend money to defend this price point because we think it's worth that. I just wanted to point out that this is a way of identifying institutional traders that is clearly different behavior to the ones above and below it. That being said, they're clearly putting a lot of money up here. The market cap, as we saw before, is about $40 million. They're willing to spend, they would have had to populate the exchange or have a credit line with the exchange of about $3 million here. What are they actually getting for their money? And for that, I want to shout out this comment on Twitter first. It was really interesting, and I did a bit of a dive into this. But it looks like they're not necessarily getting the market penetration that they were looking for. They're clearly willing to spend money. They've spent some time developing up this product, working to make really solid financial investments where they think they need to, really large financial investments where they need to. But is that actually turning into usability? So Paxos Trust, for those who don't know it, they're an institutional player that helps companies issue stablecoins. For a while there, they were issuing Binance USD, BUSD. They don't anymore, but they still help with people redeeming it. They have their own US stablecoin. They've got banking in the United States. They're kind of an institutional player. Probably as a retail user, you won't have much to do with them. But if you're doing big trades, if you're an institution, you definitely use these guys. PayPal is definitely a really good company working with these guys. Second of all, they've got this Uniswap Pool. So we can actually look into on the blockchain who holds what. So I've got this page on Etherscan. Etherscan, I know I've spoken about before. Fantastic resource. I would highly recommend looking into it. But we can see who's actually holding what. And we've got Paxos Treasury there. We've got Crypto.com there. Gate.io. And then we've got Uniswap here. And then Bitmark there. We've got two Uniswap, sorry, my bad. There and there. And we can see that the vast majority, 80%, is held by this address. And while they don't publicly name this address, this guy here, I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's somehow related to either PayPal or Pax Trust, given that the vast majority of their holdings are tokens related to that. So if we look at their 44 of the 45, so $49 million that they hold is directly related to Pax. And thus they're an institutional player. They're probably being seeded by PayPal. They're probably more of the money that PayPal's investing into this. And again, they're not probably needing to be counted in terms of like how much activity is. If we jump back here, we're really quickly getting into the point where wallets that these might be legitimate wallets, these might be legitimate traders, but they're very quickly getting under that $1,000 mark. That is a really interesting benchmark because most traders trade more than $1,000. We know from industry knowledge that the average traded amount is in the few thousands. So a lot of these people are probably traders, but they really haven't captured the institutional trader just yet. So they're probably not getting the market penetration in the institutional like crypto traders, the people that are sitting there with all their spreadsheets, with all their line graphs. They're probably not getting there quite yet. The other one I wanted to point out is this project's clearly been worked on for a while. So the earliest data we have is in June. Then they started to go out of stealth mode, they started to work on it, and then they've minted $25 million worth of this token. And that aligns with the official launch date. And that kind of adds a little bit of weighting for me to say this is probably an official party. They're probably an insider. What I'd actually speculate that this account is the PayPal app itself. Users can hold PayPal within their PayPal app without needing a crypto wallet. And that's what I reckon this is actually going to. And that's why we see a little bit of variation here with people sending and receiving here. This is the float that they've generated for their crypto wallet that people can send and receive from, but essentially all of the stuff happening in the PayPal wallet is a closed ecosystem sitting within this type of address. I hope that kind of makes sense. It's a bit of a complicated topic to get into, but I kind of just wanted to give a bit of an overview about what we can find out about projects just from their on-chain data, and about how there's one thing about looking at their press releases, and there's another thing about looking at what's actually happening here. How many transfers are happening? How many people are holding and using this? So to kind of round out this point, and again, there's not really this is going to succeed, this is going to fail. PayPal is one of those companies that through sheer willpower can move mountains. I have no doubt that this will work even if it is only within their ecosystem. But what's really interesting with stablecoins, and we're seeing this really with USDT, USDC, a lot of the Euro ones, a lot of the PAX ones, is they need to hit the ground running. They need to get a lot of momentum to just keep that momentum going, because those press releases fade, that hype dies down, and if they haven't hit that critical mass within that initial wave, sorry, you can't see this because of where my camera is, within that initial wave, it's really, really hard to do that next little bit, that bit out here. Things can slowly grow over time, but it's a lot easier when you're building from a position of strength, not building from a position of fighting to survive. So I don't really know what's going to happen with PayPal USD, but I thought given that it's such a large company and it's playing in the space, it's worth talking about. That more or less wraps up this week's episode of CEO on the Lobster. If you guys have any suggestions for topics, you like this stuff, you don't like this stuff, let us know. While Janine's away, we're happy to try a few different things, be a bit more experimental, but I just thought I should talk about one of the major participants in the market. So till next week, thanks all, and I'll see you.